Welcome, dear viewers, to a gripping tale of love, betrayal, and the unexpected twists of fate that can lead us to our true destiny. Enjoy the story. Olivia Hartley stared at the pregnancy test on the marble countertop of her opulent bathroom, willing it to change. The morning sun streamed through the stained glass windows, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across the tile floor. She'd lost count of how many times she'd been in this exact position over the last 4 years. "Please, please, please," she whispered, her manicured nails digging into her palms. The timer on her phone chimed, and Olivia's heart raced as she reached for the test. One line. Just one stupid, mocking line. "Damn it!" she cried, hurling the test into the trash can. It clattered against the gold-plated rim before settling among its predecessors, a graveyard of crushed hopes and dreams. Olivia gripped the edge of the sink, her knuckles turning white as she stared at her reflection. At 32, she was still stunning, all honey-blonde hair and azure eyes, but the strain of years of disappointment was beginning to show. Fine lines had appeared at the corners of her eyes, and there was a tightness to her smile that hadn't been there on her wedding day. "What's wrong with me?" she whispered to her reflection. "Why can't I give Ethan a baby?" As if summoned by her thoughts, her husband's voice floated up from downstairs. "Liv, you okay up there?" Olivia quickly dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "Fine," she called back, forcing cheer into her voice. "Just finishing up my makeup." She heard Ethan's footsteps retreating and let out a shaky breath. How much longer could she keep this facade up? How many more disappointments could their marriage withstand? Little did Olivia know, as she composed herself and prepared to face another day, that her world was about to be turned upside down in ways she never could have imagined. 2 weeks later, Olivia found herself in an unfamiliar waiting room, nervously tapping her foot against the linoleum floor. The community women's clinic was a far cry from the private practices she usually frequented, but desperation had driven her here. "Mrs. Hartley?" a nurse called, and Olivia jumped to her feet. She followed the nurse down a narrow hallway, the smell of disinfectant burning her nostrils. The exam room was small and outdated, but Olivia barely noticed as she changed into a paper gown with trembling hands. Dr. Patel entered, a kind smile on her face. "Mrs. Hartley, what brings you in today?" Olivia took a deep breath. I've been trying to conceive for 4 years now. No luck. But lately I've been feeling different. Nauseous, tired. I'm probably just going crazy, but I had to know for sure." The doctor nodded sympathetically. "Well, let's take a look, shall we?" As the cold gel hit her stomach and the ultrasound wand moved across her skin, Olivia held her breath. She'd been here so many times before, always with the same result, but this time was different. "Mrs. Hartley," Dr. Patel said softly, "I have some news for you." Olivia's heart stopped. "Yes?" The doctor turned the screen towards her, pointing to a small, bean-shaped blob. "Congratulations, you're pregnant." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Olivia stared at the screen, unable to comprehend what she was seeing. What?" "Pregnant," Dr. Patel repeated, her smile widening. "About 6 weeks along, I'd say." Tears began to stream down Olivia's face as the reality sank in. A baby. Her baby. Ethan's baby. The one thing they'd wanted more than anything in the world. "Oh my God," she whispered, a laugh bubbling up through her tears. "Oh my God." As she left the clinic clutching the ultrasound printout, Olivia felt lighter than air. She couldn't wait to tell Ethan. He'd be over the moon. Maybe they'd go out to celebrate, or maybe they'd just stay in and bask in their happiness together. Little did she know, fate had other plans in store. Olivia hummed to herself as she drove through the gates of their exclusive community, the ultrasound photo tucked safely in her purse. She rounded the corner to their street, already imagining Ethan's face when she told him the news. That's when she saw it. Ethan's sleek convertible was pulling out of their driveway, but he wasn't alone. In the passenger seat sat his secretary, Jessica, a leggy redhead half his age. As Olivia watched in horror, Ethan leaned over and kissed Jessica passionately before speeding off down the street. Olivia's world imploded. She sat there, frozen, as cars honked behind her. Eventually, she managed to pull over to the side of the road, her entire body shaking. "No," she whispered, her hand instinctively going to her still flat stomach. This can't be happening. But it was. The image of Ethan and Jessica's kiss played on repeat in her mind, each replay like a knife to her heart. How long had this been going on? How could he do this to her? To them? In a daze, Olivia drove home and entered their mansion. She wandered from room to room, searching for, what, evidence? Some sign that her entire life hadn't been a lie? But the house was immaculate, as always. No lipstick-stained glasses, no stray earrings, no rumpled sheets. It was as if the affair existed in a parallel universe, one that only intersected with hers for that brief, devastating moment on the street. Olivia found herself in their bedroom, staring at the framed photos on the dresser. Their wedding day, their honeymoon, the day they'd moved into this house. She picked up a photo of Ethan, studied his smiling face. "Who are you?" she whispered. In that moment, Olivia made a decision. She couldn't stay here, in this house of lies. She couldn't face Ethan, couldn't bear to hear his excuses or watch him try to explain away what she'd seen with her own eyes. With shaking hands, she began to pack. The taxi pulled away from the curb, leaving Olivia alone on the bustling train platform. She clutched her suitcase, feeling small and lost amid the rush of commuters. The weight of her decision pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. "Last call for the 3:15 to Millbrook," a conductor shouted. Olivia hesitated for a moment. Was she really doing this? Running away from her life, her home, her husband? But then the image of Ethan kissing Jessica flashed through her mind, and she squared her shoulders. Yes, she was doing this, for herself, and for the tiny life growing inside her. As the train pulled out of the station, Olivia watched the skyline of the city, her home for the past decade, fade into the distance. She placed a protective hand over her stomach. "It's just you and me now, little one," she whispered. "But we're going to be okay, I promise." The journey to Millbrook, her small hometown, took just over 2 hours. As Olivia stepped off the train, the familiar sights and smells washed over her. The old-fashioned clock tower in the town square, the scent of freshly baked bread from Miller's bakery, the sound of leaves rustling in the tall poplar trees that lined Main Street. She began the walk to her childhood home, her heels clicking against the uneven sidewalk. The streets were lined with modest 2-story houses, their paint faded but their flower boxes bright with summer blooms. It was a far cry from the manicured lawns and McMansions of her gated community, but to Olivia, it felt like coming up for air after being underwater for too long. As she turned onto Maple Street, a familiar voice called out, "Olivia? Olivia, is that you?" She looked up to see her mother, Margaret, hurrying down the sidewalk towards her, a look of joyful surprise on her face. "Mom!" Olivia cried, dropping her suitcase as her mother enveloped her in a warm hug. "Oh, sweetheart," Margaret said, pulling back to look at her daughter. "What a wonderful surprise! But is everything okay? Where's Ethan?" The mention of her husband's name sent a fresh wave of pain through Olivia's heart. It's a long story, Mom. Can we talk inside?" Margaret's brow furrowed with concern, but she nodded. "Of course, dear. I was just heading to the store, but that can wait. Come on, let's get you settled." As they walked arm in arm towards the house, Olivia felt a glimmer of hope. She might have left her life in the city behind, but here, surrounded by the love and memories of her childhood, maybe she could find the strength to face whatever came next. After a tearful conversation with her mother, Olivia excused herself to freshen up. She climbed the narrow staircase to the second floor, the familiar creak of the third step from the top bringing a flood of childhood memories. As she reached for her suitcase, a deep voice from behind startled her. "Need a hand with that?" Olivia whirled around, her heart pounding. There, filling the narrow hallway with his broad shoulders, stood a tall man in a form-fitting workout outfit. It took her a moment to place him, but when she did, her eyes widened in recognition. "Nathan? Nathan Cooper?" His face broke into a warm smile. "The one and only. Welcome home, Liv." Olivia felt a blush creep up her cheeks. Nathan had been her next-door neighbor growing up, always looking out for her like a protective older brother. But the man standing before her now was a far cry from the gangly teenager she remembered. He'd filled out, all lean muscle and chiseled jawline. Wow, it's been so long, Olivia stammered. You look different? Nathan chuckled. I hope that's a good different. Here, let me get that for you. He reached past her to grab the suitcase, his arm brushing against hers and sending an unexpected jolt through her body. As they maneuvered the bulky suitcase down the narrow hallway, Olivia found herself acutely aware of Nathan's presence. The spicy scent of his cologne, the warmth radiating from his body, the gentle way he guided her around a tight corner. So, Nathan said as they reached her old bedroom door, what brings you back to our little slice of heaven? Last I heard, you were living it up in the big city with some hotshot banker. The mention of Ethan felt like a bucket of cold water. Olivia's smile faltered. It's complicated, she said softly. Nathan's expression softened. Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pry. Listen, if you ever want to talk or just grab a coffee and catch up, I'm right next door, still in my parents' old place, if you can believe it. Olivia managed a small smile. Thanks, Nathan. I might take you up on that. As he headed back downstairs, Olivia couldn't help but watch him go. She shook her head, trying to clear it of the confusing thoughts swirling through her mind. She was pregnant, separated, and emotionally raw. The last thing she needed was to start noticing how attractive her childhood friend had become. But as she unpacked her suitcase, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that running into Nathan might be more than just a coincidence. Maybe, just maybe, coming home was exactly what she needed to heal and find her way forward. A week after her return to Millbrook, Olivia found herself sitting in the waiting room of the local women's clinic, her leg bouncing nervously. She'd managed to keep her pregnancy a secret from everyone, even her mother, but the constant morning sickness and mood swings were becoming harder to hide. Olivia Hartley? A nurse called. She followed the nurse to an exam room where she was introduced to Dr. Laura Bennett, a kind-faced woman in her 50s. So, Mrs. Hartley, what brings you in today? Dr. Bennett asked, reviewing Olivia's chart. Olivia took a deep breath. I'm pregnant, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. About 7 weeks along, and I don't think I can keep it. Dr. Bennett's expression remained neutral. I see. And may I ask why you've come to this decision? The words tumbled out of Olivia in a rush. She told Dr. Bennett everything, the years of infertility, discovering the pregnancy, catching Ethan's infidelity, fleeing to Millbrook. By the time she finished, tears were streaming down her face. I just can't do it, Olivia sobbed. I can't raise this baby alone, tied to a man who betrayed me. Please, Dr. Bennett, I need your help. The doctor listened patiently, then leaned forward, her eyes filled with compassion. Olivia, I hear your pain, and I understand why you're feeling overwhelmed. But I want you to consider something. This baby, this miracle you've wanted for so long, it's a part of you, not just Ethan, but you. And from what you've told me, you're a strong, resilient woman. I believe you have the strength to be an amazing mother, with or without a partner. Olivia shook her head. But how? I have no job, no home of my own. How could I possibly provide for a child? There are resources available, Dr. Bennett said gently. Support groups, financial assistance programs. And you have your family here in Millbrook. You're not alone, Olivia. As Dr. Bennett continued to speak, explaining the risks of termination and the alternatives available, Olivia felt her resolve wavering. Could she really do this? Could she really become a single mother? She left the clinic with a stack of pamphlets and more questions than answers. As she stepped out into the warm summer air, a familiar voice called out to her. Liv? Everything okay? She turned to see Nathan jogging towards her, concern etched on his handsome face. And in that moment, looking into his kind eyes, Olivia made a decision that would change the course of her life forever. Nathan, Olivia said, her voice thick with emotion. I could really use a friend right now. Without hesitation, Nathan wrapped an arm around her shoulders. I'm here, Liv. Whatever you need. They ended up at Lou's Diner, a local institution that hadn't changed a bit since their high school days. As they slid into a worn vinyl booth, the familiar smell of coffee and apple pie wrapping around them like a comforting blanket, Olivia felt some of the tension leave her body. "So," Nathan said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "Want to tell me what's going on? I mean, you don't have to, but I'm pregnant," Olivia blurted out. Nathan's eyes widened, his spoon clattering against the side of his mug. "Wow, okay, congratulations?" Olivia let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, it should be. Except my husband is cheating on me. I ran away from home, and I just spent the last hour begging a doctor to give me an abortion." She watched Nathan's face carefully, waiting for the judgment, the awkward attempt to excuse himself from her mess. But instead, he reached across the table and took her hand. "Liv, I'm so sorry," he said softly. "That's a hell of a lot for anyone to deal with. But listen to me. You're the strongest person I know, always have been. Whatever you decide to do, I know you've got this." Olivia felt tears welling up in her eyes. "You really think so?" Nathan squeezed her hand. "I know so. And hey, for what it's worth, I think you'd make an amazing mom." As they talked, really talked for the first time in years, Olivia felt something shift inside her. The panic and despair that had been her constant companions since that fateful day in the city began to recede, replaced by a tentative hope. By the time they left the diner, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Nathan insisted on walking Olivia home, their arms brushing occasionally as they strolled down the quiet streets. "Thanks for today," Olivia said as they reached her mother's house. "I really needed this." Nathan smiled, the fading sunlight catching the gold flecks in his hazel eyes. "Anytime, Liv, I mean it. Day or night, if you need anything, I'm here." As Olivia watched him walk away, she felt a flutter in her stomach that had nothing to do with morning sickness. She placed a hand on her belly, a small smile playing on her lips. "Maybe we'll be okay after all, little one," she whispered. The weeks flew by, and as Olivia's first trimester came to an end, she found herself settling into a new routine in Millbrook. She'd started volunteering at the local library, losing herself in the familiar smell of books and the quiet companionship of the elderly patrons. One sunny afternoon, as she was reshelving books in the children's section, she felt a familiar presence behind her. "Fancy meeting you here," Nathan's voice rumbled, sending a shiver down her spine. Olivia turned, a stack of picture books in her arms. "Nathan, what brings you to the library?" He held up a thick legal tome. "Just some light reading for work, but I was hoping I might run into you." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Oh? And why's that?" Nathan's cheeks flushed slightly. "Well, I was wondering if you might want to grab dinner with me tonight, at the Lake Cafe? They've renovated the place, and I hear the food is actually edible now." Olivia's heart skipped a beat. Was this a date? Could she even consider dating, given her situation? But as she looked at Nathan's hopeful expression, she found herself nodding. "I'd love to," she said softly. That evening, as Olivia entered the Lake Cafe on Nathan's arm, she was struck by how much had changed. The dingy diner of their youth had been transformed into a chic bistro, with soft lighting and sleek modern decor. As they settled into their seats, Nathan's eyes roamed over Olivia's face. "You look beautiful," he said softly. Olivia blushed, smoothing her hands over her dress. At 14 weeks pregnant, her belly was just beginning to show, but the flowing fabric concealed it well. As they ate and talked, Olivia found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. Nathan made her laugh, drawing out stories from their shared childhood and filling her in on the town gossip she'd missed. As the waiter cleared their plates, Nathan's expression turned serious. "Liv, there's something I need to tell you." Olivia's stomach clenched. "What is it?" Nathan took a deep breath. "I've had feelings for you for a long time, since high school, if I'm being honest. I never said anything because you were always out of my league, and then you moved away and married Ethan. But seeing you again, these past few weeks, those feelings have come rushing back." Olivia sat in stunned silence as Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I know this is fast, and I know you're going through a lot right now, but I want you to know that I'm here for you, for both of you," he said, glancing at her stomach. "I love you, Olivia. And if you'll have me, I want to build a life with you and your baby." Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes as Nathan opened the box, revealing a delicate diamond ring. Nathan, But before she could finish, a commotion at the front of the restaurant caught their attention. Olivia's blood ran cold as she recognized the voice. Where is she? Where's my wife? Ethan had found her. Olivia froze, her heart pounding as Ethan's angry voice grew closer. Nathan immediately stood, positioning himself protectively in front of her. Olivia! Ethan bellowed, pushing past a startled waiter. When he saw her, his face contorted with rage. What the hell is going on? I've been looking everywhere for you! Nathan stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice and leave. You're disturbing the other patrons. Ethan's eyes narrowed. And who the hell are you? I'm Olivia's friend, Nathan replied evenly. And right now, you need to go. Ethan let out a bitter laugh. Friend? Is that what you're calling it? Jesus, Liv, I knew you were upset, but I never pegged you for a cheater. At that, Olivia found her voice. She stood, anger replacing her fear. A cheater? That's rich coming from you. I saw you with Jessica, Ethan. Don't you dare try to turn this around on me. The color drained from Ethan's face. You saw? Every disgusting second of it. Olivia spat. Now get out, we have nothing left to say to each other. For a moment, it looked like Ethan might argue further. But then his shoulders slumped, the fight going out of him. Liv, please, can we just talk? In private? Olivia hesitated, glancing at Nathan. He squeezed her hand reassuringly. It's up to you, he murmured. I'll be right here if you need me. Taking a deep breath, Olivia nodded. Fine, 5 minutes, Ethan. That's all you get. They stepped outside, the cool night air a stark contrast to the heated atmosphere inside. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, looking lost. Olivia, I'm so sorry, he began. What you saw, it was a mistake, a stupid one-time thing. Jessica means nothing to me. You're my wife, the love of my life. Please come home. We can work this out. Olivia stared at him, this man she'd loved for so long. But all she felt now was a dull ache, like pressing on an old bruise. No, Ethan, she said softly. We can't, because it's not just about the affair. It's about the years of putting your career first, of making me feel like I was failing you because I couldn't get pregnant. Our marriage has been over for a long time. We just didn't want to admit it. Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but Olivia held up a hand. This is my decision, Ethan. Respect it or I'll get a restraining order. I mean it. For a long moment they stood in silence, the weight of their shattered marriage hanging between them. Finally, Ethan nodded. Okay, he said quietly, if that's what you want. But Liv, I really am sorry. For everything. As Olivia watched him walk away, she felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. One chapter of her life was ending, but another was just beginning. When she re-entered the restaurant, Nathan was waiting anxiously. Are you okay? He asked, pulling her into a gentle hug. Olivia leaned into him, breathing in his comforting scent. I am, she said, surprising herself with how true it felt. She pulled back, looking into Nathan's concerned eyes. Now, about that proposal. The next few months were a whirlwind for Olivia. As her pregnancy progressed, she found herself embracing her new life in Millbrook with open arms. She and Nathan took things slowly, dating properly despite the rather unorthodox start to their relationship. On a crisp autumn day, as they strolled through the town park hand in hand, Olivia finally gave Nathan her answer. Yes, she said simply, squeezing his hand. Nathan stopped in his tracks, a look of confusion crossing his face. Yes, what? Olivia laughed, the sound light and free. Yes, I'll marry you, you big dummy. Nathan's face lit up with joy. He swept Olivia into his arms, spinning her around carefully. Really? You're sure? Olivia nodded, tears of happiness glistening in her eyes. I'm sure. I love you, Nathan. You've been my rock through all of this, and I know you'll be an amazing father to this little one. As Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger, the same one he'd offered that fateful night at the Lake Cafe, Olivia felt a sense of peace wash over her. This was right. This was where she was meant to be. The months flew by, and before Olivia knew it, she was holding her newborn daughter, Emma, in her arms. Nathan was by her side, beaming with pride and love for both of them. But their happiness was soon to be tested. When Emma was 3 months old, Olivia received a summons to appear in court. Ethan was finally pushing forward with divorce proceedings, unaware of the life-changing surprise that awaited him. Nathan, who had revealed himself to be a skilled lawyer, took charge of the situation. "Don't worry, Liv, we'll face this together. I won't let him bully you or take advantage of the situation." The day of the court hearing arrived. Olivia dressed Emma in her prettiest outfit, a tiny floral dress with matching booties. With Nathan by her side and Emma in her arms, Olivia entered the courtroom, her heart racing. There, on the opposite side, sat Ethan, with Jessica by his side. Ethan's eyes widened as he saw Olivia, then dropped to the baby in her arms. His mouth fell open in shock, and Jessica gripped his arm, her face a mix of surprise and anger. As the proceedings began, Nathan presented their case with skill and passion. He argued that Ethan's infidelity had irreparably damaged the marriage, and that Olivia had every right to seek a divorce. All the while, Emma cooed softly in Olivia's arms, drawing curious glances from everyone in the courtroom. When Ethan took the stand, he seemed distracted, his eyes constantly darting to the baby. He stumbled through his prepared statement about regret and wanting to make amends, but his words lacked conviction. Finally, it was Olivia's turn to speak. She stood, adjusting Emma on her hip, and faced the judge. "Your Honor," Olivia said, her voice strong despite her nerves. "As you can see, there's something the court needs to know. 3 months ago, I gave birth to this beautiful baby girl. Emma is Ethan's daughter." A collective gasp went through the courtroom. Ethan slumped in his chair, his face pale. Olivia continued. "I discovered I was pregnant on the same day I saw Ethan kissing Jessica. I left because I couldn't bear the thought of raising my child in a home built on lies and betrayal. This baby was the one thing I wanted more than anything in the world. And when I finally got my miracle, my husband wasn't there to share in that joy. He was too busy betraying our marriage vows." She turned to face Ethan directly, Emma gurgling happily in her arms. "I've built a new life in Millbrook, surrounded by love and support. This is where Emma belongs. I'm not asking for anything from you, Ethan. I just want to be free to move on and give our daughter the stable, loving home she deserves." The judge nodded thoughtfully, her eyes softening as she looked at Emma. "Mr. Hartley, given this new information, do you wish to amend your petition?" Ethan stood slowly, his eyes never leaving his daughter. I had no idea. A baby? I'm a father?" He turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I need time to process this. Can we postpone the proceedings?" Jessica tugged at Ethan's sleeve, whispering furiously, but he shrugged her off. The judge considered for a moment. "Given these extraordinary circumstances, I'm inclined to grant a brief recess. We'll reconvene in 1 week. I suggest both parties use this time to reassess their positions and perhaps engage in mediation." As they left the courthouse, Ethan approached Olivia hesitantly, Jessica hovering a few steps behind. "Olivia, can I hold her? Please?" Olivia hesitated, then nodded. She carefully transferred Emma to Ethan's arms. The baby looked up at him curiously, then reached out to grab his tie. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "She's beautiful, Liv. I'm so sorry. For everything, I know it doesn't change anything, but I truly am sorry." Olivia watched as Ethan cradled their daughter, a mix of emotions swirling inside her. "We can arrange visitation, Ethan, but you need to understand. Nathan has been there for Emma since before she was born. He's the only father she knows." Ethan nodded, reluctantly handing Emma back to Olivia. "I understand. I'd like to be part of her life, if you'll let me." As Ethan walked away, Jessica trailing behind him with a scowl on her face, Olivia turned to Nathan, a watery smile on her face. "Let's go home," she said softly. "It's been a long day for all of us." Nathan wrapped an arm around Olivia and Emma, guiding them towards the car. As they drove home, Olivia couldn't help but feel that despite the emotional turmoil of the day, they had taken a significant step towards a new chapter in their lives. One where Emma would have all the love and support she deserved. 9 months later, Olivia stood in the backyard of her and Nathan's new home, watching as their friends and family gathered to celebrate little Emma's first birthday. The baby girl giggled in her high chair, frosting smeared across her cherubic face. As Nathan lit the candle on the cake, Olivia felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She thought back to that day in the opulent bathroom of her old life, staring at yet another negative pregnancy test. If someone had told her then where she'd be now, she never would have believed them. But here she was, a published children's book author, happily married to her childhood sweetheart, and mother to the most beautiful little girl in the world. As everyone sang happy birthday, Olivia caught Nathan's eye. He winked at her, mouthing, "I love you." Olivia smiled, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach, where the earliest signs of a new life were once again making themselves known. She hadn't told Nathan yet. That would be his birthday surprise next week. As Emma smashed her tiny fists into the cake, eliciting laughter from the gathered crowd, Olivia felt a profound sense of contentment. This was her happily ever after, messy, imperfect, and more wonderful than she ever could have imagined.